Hello, everyone. Welcome to yet another session of the daily news analysis by SRIRAM'S IAS, where we take up the important articles featuring in the Hindu newspaper and break them down for our understanding from the UPSC examination point of view. So, let's start our today's discussion by taking the important articles featuring in the New Delhi edition of the Hindu newspaper. So, the articles which are important are featuring on our screen, and with this, let's take up our first article for the day. The first article which appears in the newspaper reads, Cold wave makes Christmas coldest day this season so far. So, as we can take out from the article, the topic at hand, which becomes important for us, is the topic of cold wave. We often see that these geographical phenomena is being focused by UPSC a lot, and these new phenomena which have occurred, such as the heat waves or cold waves, which have become more prominent in the world. The aspect of climate change can be attributed to this for their increased occurrence. That is why these phenomena are focused by the UPSC in terms of the examination, and that is why the topic becomes important for us from the examination perspective. So, from the same perspective, we'll analyze what exactly is a cold wave, what are the conditions that the IMD or the Indian Meteorological Department uses to categorize a cold wave, what are those conditions that are favorable which cause a cold wave, and then what are the impacts that these cold wave have on the human as well as the agricultural aspects. So let's understand one by one what is a cold wave. So a cold wave, in very simpler terms, if you are to talk, is just a severe drop in the temperature of a region. So if there is a severe drop in the temperature of a region and there are cold winds blowing in that particular region, that particular phenomena is known as that we would call it that region is facing a cold wave. But IMD has a technical definition as well, and we look at the technical definition as well. So the IMD defines cold wave qualitatively as a condition of air temperature. So the air temperature is the keyword, which is falling, which becomes fatal to the human body when exposed. So what are the conditions then which are favorable for cold wave? So there are certain conditions, geographical conditions, which come together and would create cold wave conditions. So, for example, inflow of cold air mass from high latitudes over the region in the rear of the passage of a well-marked low-pressure system in the westerly wind flow of mid-latitudes. What this simply means is that when a cold air mass or a air column which is cold air comes from high latitude to the lower latitude region, so it is bringing along with it its cold air mass and therefore dropping the temperature. This is one favorable condition. Then foggy weather during the day. If there is a lot of fog during the day, it inhibits day warming of the region. The warming that should happen because of the sun's rays, which we call insolation, that happens less because there is fog. The fog prevents the region from warming, and that becomes another condition. And strong radiation cooling during the night under clear sky conditions. So we look at other reasons why they are formed, but these major conditions, primary conditions, when they are there, we can see that the cold wave can be formed. So how is a cold wave categorized or defined in terms of temperature by IMD? So as we had seen for the heat wave also before, there are different kinds of definitions for different regions because the temperature change in different regions can be different. So one definition is for the plains, where a cold wave is declared in the plains when minimum temperature is 10 degrees Celsius is or below. So a simple condition is that if the temperature of a plain region simply goes below 10 degrees Celsius, it can be categorized as a cold wave. And along with that, it is 4.5 degrees Celsius less than normal for 2 consecutive days. So the second condition is that whatever the normal temperature the region faces for 2 consecutive days, close to 4.5 degrees Celsius, the temperature is less than that. So this signifies the sudden drop in temperature, and that is where a cold wave occurs. Similarly, second condition is for coastal stations. Different regions have different conditions. So for coastal stations, the threshold value of minimum temperature is 10 degrees Celsius, which is rarely reached. However, the local people feel discomfort due to wind chill factor, which reduces the minimum temperature by a few degrees depending upon the wind speed. So the conditions for determining a cold wave in coastal station is a wind chill factor is a major measure of this, because this is a measure of the cooling effect on the wind on the temperature of the air. So this is for the coastal stations. Now, when we talk about the regions that are most affected by cold wave, so there is a region in India known as India's core cold wave zone. This means that India has a core cold wave zone which covers certain regions which face more cold wave condition than the other regions. So these are Punjab, Himachal, Uttarakhand, Delhi, Haryana, Rajasthan, Uttar Pradesh, Gujarat, Maharashtra, Chhattisgarh, Bihar, Jharkhand, West Bengal, Odisha, and Telangana. So as we can see, most of the north, central, and a little bit of the adjoining states of that forms a part of the core cold wave zone for India. And we'll understand why only this region faces an extreme amount of cold wave. So let's look at the reasons behind why these cold waves form, and then why are they forming only on these particular regions. So the first reason is snowfall. This snowfall, which occurs in the upper Himalayas, are responsible for the wind chill factors, and this snowfall is what brings the cold air from the higher latitudes to the lower latitudes. And we know that the snowfall happens in Himalayas. That is why the nearby regions of these particular areas face cold wave. Then is the factor of western disturbances. Western disturbances are those storms that originate in the Mediterranean region and bring winter rainfall to northwest India. Now, these western disturbances, when they originate in the Mediterranean region, if that Mediterranean Sea is cold, these western disturbances or these winds also carry that cold along with them. So this particular condition is also there, and when these rain coming disturbances are not there due to the lack of the western disturbances, which are extra tropical storms that mostly appear during the winter months, these cold winds from the Himalayas continue to blow in the north parts of India, thereby allowing the prevailing cold conditions to continue and intensify. So the aspect of western disturbances also over here is very important. Then the third reason is subsidence of cold air over the region. What does this mean? Subsidence is the downward movement of cold and dry air closer to the surface. So, in the cold winter months, this cold air subsides to the surface. Why is this subsiding again? Because the cold air is coming from the Himalayan region, and this air is subsiding in this particular region, bringing cold wave. Then the fourth important reason is of the absence of cloud cover, which means that during the winter months, clouds are not there. So because when there are clouds, they trap some of the outgoing infrared radiation and radiate it back downward, which warms the ground. But since there are no clouds, the absence of cloud cover again intensifies the conditions for occurrence of a cold wave. So these are the reasons majorly which is why cold wave is formed in a particular region, and these conditions are more favorable to the north and central parts of India, and that is why cold wave occurs in those particular region. Now let's talk about the impact that cold wave can have on the various aspects of society. So cold wave obviously impacts agriculture. It can destroy the rabi crop. Rabi crop is that crop which is sowed after the monsoon, so therefore it the harvest the sowing season, the season between sowing and harvest falls in the winter time. That is why the rabi crop is especially endangered due to cold wave, and it affects the productivity of the cash crops. So there is an impact on health as well, because the cold wave is extremely fatal to human health. It could affect vulnerable people such as the infants, pregnant women, elderly people with chronic diseases. Then it also makes an impact on visibility. This we see something in Delhi as well, where because of the fog and smog, it creates impediments on invisibility, and the cold wave can affect the visibility, which can be more prone to accidents and the loss of life caused due to these accidents. So these are the impacts that cold wave can cause. So this was a discussion based on this particular topic, and with this, let's move on to our next article for the day. The next article which appears in the newspaper reads: CPCB report shows fewer polluted river stretches, but worst ones remain unchanged. Now, why is this headline featuring in the newspaper? This headline features in the newspaper because the nodal body which takes care of pollution in the country, the Central Pollution Control Board, has come out with a river pollution report. What is this river pollution report? That is the topic for us to study from the examination perspective, because this pollution board has carried out a report and carried out experimentation on how much is the pollution level of various rivers in the country. So this CPCB network, for its report purposes, monitors water quality at around 4,484 locations in the country. These locations are there in the rivers of the country, and from those locations, this particular CPCB body takes out the water sample, will measure whether that water is polluted or not, and will give us an account of what is the pollution level of the rivers of our country. So what is the report saying in a gist? It says that the number of polluted stretches in India's rivers has fallen from 351 in 2018 to 311 in 2022. So one can say that this is a slight improvement, even though not much. That 351 polluted stretches were there in 2018 report, and the 2022 report, the number has gone down slightly to 311. But the tricky thing, which we'll also understand when we look at the report in further manner in a while, but it says that the number of most polluted stretches has not changed. So the numbers which are changed are the lesser polluted stretches, and this is something to be looked at. So let's understand what this report on river pollution is all about, because whenever we have a question or we encounter a discussion on river pollution, we should have data to back our claims. So this particular report supplies us with the very crucial data. So first of all, let's understand the concept of biological oxygen demand, because this is the parameter which the sample measurers make use of. So as we said, these 4,500 locations which are there, the body will go there, it will take the samples of water, and then what it will measure is the biological oxygen demand of that water sample. What do we mean by this biological oxygen demand then? This biological oxygen demand is nothing but the measure of dissolved oxygen in the water body. So we know that water contains oxygen through which the aquatic animals breathe, and this oxygen is dissolved in the water. So the biological oxygen demand is nothing but measuring this oxygen, dissolved oxygen, that microorganisms like bacteria need to oxidize, and organic substances in water are referred to as biological oxygen demand. What this means is that uh, whenever there is a water body, in order for those substances to break down, the breakdown which is done by bacteria, they need oxygen to break these substances down. And how much oxygen they are requiring to break these organic substances in water, what can be said as oxidizing these substances, that amount of oxygen what they require is known as biological oxygen demand. So it can be very simple that the lower the oxygen that is required by the microorganisms, the less polluted the body is, and the more amount of oxygen that is required by the microorganisms, which means that the more polluted the body is. That is why it becomes a metric for determining the quality of water. And temperature, pH, microbes, organic and inorganic elements all influence this rate of oxygen consumption. That is why the measurers measure the rate of biological oxygen demand of the water sample, and through that we can understand how much the water body is polluted. So let's get deep into this and understand how these areas are defined. So the biological oxygen demand exceeding 3 milligrams per liter is identified as polluted locations. So whenever, let's say, they went to a river stretch, they collected a sample, and the biological oxygen demand for that particular water sample is less than 3 milligrams per liter, which means that for a per liter of that water sample, the microorganisms do not need more than 3 milligrams to break down the organic matter. If that is the case, the water can be said as non-polluted and it can be called as safe. But the moment it exceeds 3 milligrams, exceeds 3 milligrams per liter, it can be said that that stretch is a polluted stretch. So even in that, there are various categorizations which have been made to identify the level of pollution that is caused in the water body. So there are five categories. These are the biological oxygen demand which exceeds 30 milligram per liter are considered priority one, meaning the most polluted and thus needing the most urgent remediation. So there are five priority areas. One is P1, which will say that it is the highest impurity, because this particular water sample will have more than 30 milligram per liter of their biological oxygen demand. So we can see the normal limit is less than 3 milligrams, and for a particular stretch, if it has more than 30 milligrams, it would come in the priority 1 area, which means it is highly polluted. Then we have the priority 2 or P2, which indicates a biological oxygen demand of 20 to 30 milligrams. And then there are P3 and P4, which stands between 3 milligrams and 20 milligrams. So if they are more than 10 or more than 15, less than 20, they would come in the category of P3 and P4. And last one is the P5, where if it is above 3 milligrams but below 6 milligrams. So between 3 and 6 milligrams per liter, the P5 area exists, which we can say is the least polluted. So the success of river cleaning programs would be measured by the number of stretches moving from P1 area, priority 1 area, to 2 to 3, and ultimately to 5, and ultimately out of 5, which would say that the polluted stretches are not polluted now. So these are the categorizations made by this particular report on the basis of the biological oxygen demand of the water samples. So now, what other observations with respect to these categories? In the 2018 report, there were 45 stretches of river water categorized in the P1 category, the most severe category, wherein the river stretches were most highly polluted. Where the safe level is less than 3 milligrams per liter, the river is having more than 30 milligrams per liter, and this is highly unsafe for human consumption. This was 45, 16 stretches were in P2, 43 were in P3, 72 were in P4, and 175 were in P5. Now, what is the latest report saying? It latest says that 46 are in P1. So where we saw the headline that number of stretches in the polluted from 350 have come to 311, the number of stretches in actually the most severe category have not lessened, and if anything, one has increased in that category. Second is 16 in P2, 39 in P3, 65 in P4, and 145 in the P5 category. So we can say that the stretches which are decreased are actually in the least polluted category. So this is the real understanding of this particular report. This is what we try to understand from this particular report. And when we talk about the state-wise distribution, Gujarat and UP have the highest number of P1 river stretches, which are 6, and Maharashtra has the most polluted river stretches at the number of 55, followed by MP, Bihar, Kerala, Karnataka, and Uttar Pradesh. This is where the report stands, and the CPCB has to say that in order to clean these rivers, they are taking they're undertaking the installation of sewage treatment plants. So STPs are being set up under in all these states. The status of the work is this right now, and this is the discussion of this particular report, which and this is very useful data which we can make use for us in our answers and other discussions. So we finish our discussion over here, and we'll meet again next time with the important articles from the newspaper. Thank you.